Alright, y'all know I can't be too quiet up in here. Now, we're going to be talking about the new installment of A Quiet Place Day 1 in today's video. So welcome back to A Slice, Spice, and a Dice Movie Reviews. Be sure to check the description. Follow me on my other channels. I cover true crime. That's probably where most of you are coming from. But, you know, I do have a love of horror films and thrillers and all films, really. So that's what we talk about here on this channel. And specifically today, like I said, we're going to be visiting Day 1. So let's start off with, first of all, saying this. This is going to be spoiler-free. Yes, I will talk about some of it. So if you don't want to know anything at all about this, well, then why are you watching in the first place? Go on, click off now, good Lord. But other than that, we're going to just go over some basics of it, talk about what I felt what the highlights were, and that's it. So let's get into it. So first, I'm just going to read from the screen. I'll put it up here from the IMDb, like their little description of it. So it says, a woman named Sam finds herself trapped in New York City during the early stages of an invasion by alien creatures with ultra-sensitive hearing. Again, we have director Michael Cernowski, writers Krasinski, who we've seen in the other two, Woods and Cernowski. And then, of course, we have our stars, who we will talk about here momentarily. But before we talk about the cast and the stars, I want to talk a little bit more about that plot line. So Samira, who is terminally ill, she's in like this kind of hospice type situation or whatever. So she's staying in this place. They're going to take a day trip into New York City. She has what's an emotional comfort cap. We'll talk about that when we get to the cast. So she doesn't even want to go. She's like, I'll go if I can get some pizza. So it's like a motivating factor to keep in mind throughout the film. They go into town, something starts popping off, they're like, oh my gosh, we have to go, but it's too late. And an invasion happens, and herein we begin to watch her story, as well as other people's, but mostly through her eyes, her viewpoint. So let's talk about a couple of the characters, and specifically let's start off with Lupita Nyong'o. So we are very familiar seeing her in several films. For me, most notably was the movie Us. She's been in Black Panther, she's been in several things. And for me, when I see her picture attached to a film, like her, you know, her image, whatever, immediately good, right? You know it's going to be good if she's in it. She's just one of those actresses that delivers like that. To me, she's in that category of a Jodie Foster, these, you know, major names. Obviously, she's of this time. Jodie and those people are of a different time or whatever, but they're still major names. So what I'm getting at is her talent is immense, and it's definitely immense in this film, especially for one where you have to be quiet the entire time, and it's also a prequel. It's not like, you know, we've already gone through two of these, right? So she delivers a stellar performance in this. Now, obviously, in the beginning, she is able to talk because it's day one. We're just learning what happened. But throughout it, she brings a character arc and narrative that is fresh, makes you think, and makes you talk. And for me, that's very major, especially when you get into thrillers and horror films. So my hat is off to her. I love her to death. I basically will want to run out and watch anything that she is in. So she gets 2 thumbs up. Okay. Now you can see on the screen here, there's some other notable names here. Joseph Quinn, her co-star, he does an amazing job. Alex Wolff, Elaine Umiri. I mean, there's just several names in this who we've seen in other things. They deliver. It's always going to be good. Now again, in films like this, with the silence and that type of stuff, they rely on a different form of selling the story, and I do feel like they do a good job. Now let's go ahead and start talking about some specifics of it that really stuck out to me. Now remember, this is a prequel, okay? So we have 2 other films that came before this. A Quiet Place 2, and in those we're introduced to this world, right? This whole world where aliens have invaded, they can hear things from, you know, however far away, and the whole world lives in silence now. So here we go to the prequel of how this all began. Now here's the thing with this. Let's talk about that right there. Okay, so for prequels, the way they go, a lot of times for me where they go wrong is they tell too much information. To me, this one did not tell too much information. Another part where they go wrong in these type of films with aliens and stuff like that is when you want to start literally doing like intros and icebreakers with the aliens to be like, let's have a family dinner with them. I don't want to have dinner with them. I mean, I don't think anybody did, right? But some people did in the movie. Okay, but that wasn't by their choice. You do see more of the aliens in this, Do we get like major answers as to why this is day one and all that type of stuff? Not really. Okay. Like, not really. So for being a prequel, if you're looking for that, in my opinion, it's kind of like, oh, well, this is just like another installment. And in fact, the person who I went to see this was their critique of it. Okay, they were talking about like, they're like, you know that zombie show on TV, how it just became a part where you're just literally watching the same story but through different people's, like, you know, characters and whatnot. This kind of felt like that a little bit. I did not have a problem with that because I thought it was cool. I loved it. I love the New York vibe. I love Lupita. I like the whole energy of it. So for me, I was like, no, I'm fine with this, because again, if you want to sit here and start talking about the origin of the aliens and all this all in one film, it's going to be too much for me. Now, let's talk about post-apocalypse, that type thing. Obviously, this isn't really post because it's all happening. I love films that it's like, and you find this in zombie films and things, that natural disasters, things like that, where everything's normal, bam, it's not. And here we go. We've entered into this world. How do we escape? What's going on? There's a claustrophobic closing in energy. This movie definitely delivers that. It could be a little tighter, but it's there, and I was here for it. That, like, almost instantaneously, bam, you were thrown into this action. We have to survive. How does the world around us work? And so it does well with that, in my opinion. The aesthetic is just that. It's New York. It's, you know, everything's crumbled. Everything's, you know, not when I say everything's crumbled, I mean, you're watching it crumble, right? There's the few scenes where you get to start off with, here's normalcy, here's the other. And so I thought it delivered well on that. I've never been to New York, but I feel like it gave good New York energy. But for those who have been or live in New York, well, you let me know, okay? It looked authentic, though, before it got all torn up. Okay, so let's talk about half the reason why a lot of us go to the scary features, jump scares. Yes, it has jump scares. Yes, there is tension. The thing that is very unique about these movies is because you're ultra quiet, they need to, and they do, make it in such a way that it's like you are highly aware of the potential of any sound. So one of the things in this film is there's a cat that's very prevalent. Some of it is unbelievable, I will say that, but overall I like the cat being in it. It didn't go too over the top. But for example, I was like, how, and I didn't want to say anything, but I was like, the cat was very quiet throughout the whole film, okay? So that's where it's like, really, you know, or like the first couple, like, really, we've got a baby that doesn't ever really do anything. There's some things that are noisy that you're like, come on now, you know, like, can we really all be in a big group like this and not one person make noise? You know, so there was things of that nature that, again, scary films or movies in general are asking you to suspend your belief, and you definitely have to do that for this film a couple of times to be like, seriously, like, really? But again, there was, for me, parts of the film that were good and overrode that, to where it wasn't like, okay, look, y'all want me to pretend this isn't happening while there's bad performances and bad, that, you know, that type thing. That wasn't present here. Okay, so let's talk about a couple more things and then I'll call it good. Here is my thing, and I've hinted on this throughout, but I want to talk about it. So when they start pumping out sequels, things of this nature and whatnot, and they usually will go into these big origins. Think Michael Myers, the Halloween franchise, when they went back and it's like, oh, well, he came from, like, you know, this cult and all this and all that. When you start getting way too in-depth with the backstory of the creature, you lose me. For me, horror films, less is more in a lot of ways, and it's a very fine line. So you don't get too much of a backstory here, like I said earlier, with the aliens, but for me, that was fine. You do see them more in this, but it wasn't so overdone that it was like, huh, okay. I could see them going forth with that, and like maybe others to come, because this franchise does very well. So you know they're going to keep making them, and we'll talk about that in a second because they are coming out with another one. So that dynamic of this for me was fine. Now I know some people might be like, look, there is no substance to that. Like, what is this, day one? And if you're looking for the prequel of what it was like, you might be disappointed in that level, on that level. But to me, I felt like it was a good balance. For me, the film overall is definitely, you want to see it. If you're still in the theaters when you see this, go see it, but it's worth renting, whatever you want to call it. And I felt like it did good. I didn't need a ton of more information to it. It is what it is. I'm kind of fine with watching different people's versions of how they handled this event in time in the make-believe world of, you know, A Quiet Place. Place. I'm fine with that until it just gets old, and that's kind of what happens. It'll just get old eventually. Now again, because this movie had something to say, and Lupita delivered that message, in my opinion, very well, I felt like it brought a little bit more to the table than your average horror film. Now speaking of other ones and whatnot, let's take a look at this quick screenshot and talk about this. So I put on the screen here, this is by Screen Rant, it's by Dalton Norman, Quiet Place 3, cast, story, and everything we know. And it just goes through here, but the highlights of it, they write, Quiet Place 3 is confirmed in development with John Krasinski, sorry about that, attached as the writer. Emily Blunt, other cast members are expected to return. It was going to come out in 2025. It's been delayed. It's expected to continue exploring how humanity fights back against the alien invasion, with the Abbott family at the center of the narrative. No official plot details have been revealed yet. So again, I'm here for it. I'll totally go see it. I enjoyed part 1. I enjoyed part 2. Part 1 for me, I liked a lot more than part 2. And honestly, I'm going to say this. For me, if you wanted to rank them, I go part 1, then day 1, then part 2. That's just me. The original is usually always best, right? For me, like when you get into like Alien or Aliens, that's where you can like really talk about, for me at least, like, okay, well, Alien Part 2 is pretty damn good, right? So anyways, if you saw it, let me know what you thought. Are you looking forward to Part 3? Are you over the storyline? Did you feel like it was not enough of what happened, like the origins of like really what took place, or was it just enough for you? That's one thing I'm really curious about, because I saw so many different comments on that, and I thought it was an interesting aspect of that. So anyways, I do appreciate it if you're still watching. So for me, this is another one that gets a slice of dice and a spice. What does that rating system mean? I don't know, I just made it up. So anyways, let me know what you think down in the comment section, and until we gather around the old TV and do all this again, I'll see y'all soon.